Ba-da-ba-ba, ba-da-ba-ba. All right. Promoter 101. 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 Promoter 101.
Hey, this is Kevin French, and I'm on Promoter 101.
Hey, didn't see you there. Come on over, pull up a chair. Luke and I were just talking about all the things going on in the music business this week. Plus, we have a few guests dropping by as well. I think you might even know a few of them. You might remember good old Larry Butler. He used to work in the record biz as an executive years ago, and now he's put his mind to work and written a book about how to succeed in the business. I think you guys might really appreciate what he has to say. And I'm sure you all know Marsha Vlasic. She is the president of AGI and booking everyone from Elvis Costello to Neil Young. She'll be here as well. Ain't that right, Luke?
It is, Dan. Also, we're going to be joined by ICM partners Rick Farrell, who's going to drop by to turn the tables on us. It's episode 45 of Promoter 101. I'm Luke Pierce, and of course, that was Dan Steinberg.
Hi, this is John Scher from Metropolitan Entertainment Consultants and Promoter 101.
Get ready. Promoter 101 is coming near you.
Luke, can you think of three cooler people to hang out with than Scott Ciampino, Andrea Johnson, and Brian Penix?
Honestly, no. They are all great hangs, and you can find out in person at WA Conference in Seattle on Thursday, September 7th.
What's up, Beantown? We're coming for you. Berklee College of Music at Berklee Popular Institute on Thursday, October 12th.
Shout out to 615. We're all going to be in Nash Vegas for IEVA Conference on Monday, October 16th.
Keep up with us on Twitter. I'm the Jew. The show is Promoters 101. That's plural, Promoters. And Luke's W. Luke Pierce.
If you have any thoughts or feedback about the podcast, we want to hear about it. Send us an email with your ideas to steiny@promoter101.net. Be sure to subscribe to Promoter 101 wherever you podcast, and please help us out by spreading the word and telling your friends.
If you missed any of the past podcasts, you can always catch up with Promoter 101 at promoter101.net. This week we feature a reissue of episode 5 featuring Ringo Starr's manager / agent Dave Hart with a cameo from Emporium's Jared Woods and Aaron Reynolds. Also Staples Center's Lee Zeidman, the Paramount Denver's Chris Goddard, Minneapolis First Avenue's Nate Kranz, and Mesa Art Center's Randy Vogel, as well as Rick Hansen from the Historic Theater Group in Minneapolis, plus Scott Ciampino from the Triple Door. If you haven't heard it yet, it's new to you.
Hey everyone, this is Cindy Leinott,
Bruce Solar,
Ali Spagnola,
Ari Herstand,
J-Bo Lewis,
Michael Yerke,
John Meglin,
David Ritz, Larry Butler,
Andy Gould,
John Finberg,
Kara Finkenberg,
Jonathan Shank.
You are listening to Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
It's time for the news of the week, Dan. Let's take a trip down Tidal Lane. We have the revolving door of the CEO position at Tidal as they announce their fourth chief executive officer in just 2 years since Jay-Z's takeover of the streaming music platform. Richard Sanders is going to be the fourth CEO of Tidal. He's going to join the company as there's a major lawsuit threatened by Kanye West, but of course a new $200 million round of funding and an investment from Sprint. This is the fourth person to take over this company, Dan. They've obviously made a lot of headway in terms of making sure they're staying afloat with cash, but have kind of disappointed investors in regards to subscriber growth, among many other things. Despite all this, they've had some really high-profile releases like Jay-Z's recent 444, as well as Beyonce and Rihanna. Right now, it just seems like a struggling service out there. What are you thinking about this, Dan?
You know, I'm kind of hearing that you're on the short list to be their sixth CEO, Luke. So, good luck with that. That should be in about 6 weeks, right?
Sounds about right, Dan. I'll be tendering my resignation shortly and joining their board as the new chairman of board of directors in about 5 weeks.
So in about 6 weeks, Promoter 101 will probably be on tilt.
That's true. And in probably about 15 weeks, they'll be the seventh CEO of this organization. This thing seems like a complete mess, complete turnaround. I think at best it's an acquisition target as it kind of dwindles out in these things. But this $200 million investment from Sprint is really just being buoyed by the fact that Jay-Z gets to release exclusive music on it once in a while, and he's got some big acts that came along with them. We're seeing some serious competition in the streaming space right now. Disney announced yesterday that they're going to be launching a video streaming service, and I wouldn't imagine that some sort of musical component would follow far behind that, or at least some windowing of rights to Disney music. So, Netflix, Spotify, everyone from video streaming to music streaming, everybody's being competitive in that space, and I don't know if Tidal has what it takes at this point.
Well, you got to just wonder. I mean, Jay-Z clearly is going to be able to bring Beyonce. They share a checkbook, you would assume, so what's good for one's going to be good for the other. But Kanye West toured with Jay-Z not too long ago. You would figure that if he was truly involved, he'd be able to pick up the phone and work this out with his buddy.
Well, clearly there's been a separation between Kanye and Jay-Z on that front of things. Remember that show in Sacramento last year where Kanye, kind of ended his St. Pablo tour. But, you had some comments that came out from Jay-Z and Beyonce's camp because Kanye was kind of on a Jay-Z rant. So, maybe a little love lost between the two after all this time.
That's so sad to see when Kanye and Jay-Z split up. I hope they get back together for the kids.
Keep it together for the kids.
Let's move on. We tragically lost a legend this week, and we want to take a minute to remember Glenn Campbell. He was 81. Rest in peace. He'll always be a Beach Boy in my heart.
He was in the Beach Boys?
He was. He absolutely was.
There's a few interesting videos floating around the internet this week, one of which was from Irish singer Sinead O'Connor, who released a tearful video via social media on August 3rd discussing her mental illness that raised a lot of concern about her well-being. I'm reading a transcript here of the video, Dan. I actually haven't seen it. She says, "Suddenly all the people who are supposed to be loving you or taking care of you or treat you like shit. If it was me, I'd be gone straight away back to my mom. People who suffer from mental illness are the most vulnerable people on earth," she added. "You've got to take care of us. We're not like everybody." She went on later to add that she hoped the video would be somehow helpful for people in similar situations. So a very bizarre situation. You've got celebrities and musicians and artists like Annie Lennox expressing concern for Sinead on social media following the release of the video. And it's not really the first incident, really, to make people concerned for Sinead O'Connor. She talked about in years past how she was diagnosed as being bipolar, and she has attempted suicide in the past. That's very sad to see.
Joining us now, we're lucky enough to catch up with Bruce Garfield, who's worked with Sinead for years, to give us his take. Welcome to the podcast, Bruce.
Thank you, Dan. Happy to be here.
I know you probably can't get too deep into it, but what do you make of what's going on this week? How's your girl?
Sinead, obviously, from what she's posted on Facebook, is not in good shape, but this is not a new occurrence. This is something that she's been living with for many years.
Well, I know we're all pulling for her, my friend, and we all wish her the best.
Well, thank you. This may be the outreach she finally needed. It's a long and deep story. I go back with her at least 10 years. So hopefully this will be at the beginning of a new phase of her life and get her back together where she should be. She's a wonderful artist. She's a wonderful person, and she's just suffering. And I appreciate your concern, Dan.
Well, I think we all just want to see her back on stage, and we want to see her back together mentally to a point where she feels supported enough that she can share her art with the world again.
Okay, well, she's got those fans praying for her.
Bruce, thanks so much.
You're welcome, Dan.
Touring news, Jerry Seinfeld is crushing his Australia tour. His representative, Kevin Doctorman, says the tour has sold over 89,000 tickets. Who are these people? Couldn't resist, Luke.
Some cancellations out there. Papa Roach, the California-based rock band, announced they were canceling a series of tour dates in August, while their frontman, Jacoby Shaddix, underwent medical care for his voice. So vocal surgery is going to bring him off the road for some shows in Oregon, Illinois, and Alaska at the state fair. On his own social media, Shaddix posted a photo of himself confined to a hospital bed and thanked fans for his well wishes.
In other news, the Hollywood Bowl has re-upped their deal with partnership of Live Nation, Andy Hewitt, and Bill Silva for an additional 10 years.
The buzz about Phish's Baker's Dozen continues to dominate the industry chatter this week. 13 shows played between July 21st and August 6th, and now that's 52 total at MSG. Pretty incredible stuff.
Phil Ernst is joining us now. The Phish thing, man, 13 shows. Everybody's buzzing on it. How did it work out for you guys?
Oh, it was amazing. For good reason, everybody was buzzing. It was 13 shows, 227,000 sold tickets. We sold 34,000 tickets from the load-in day alone right through to night 13. So that basically was essentially 2 entire gardens in and of itself. Everyone knows not one repeated song, no set list. Just thrilling. It was so much fun the energy was amazing. The fans were exhilarated. The staff was excited to be there. And it was 13 amazing nights.
Some Ringling Brothers goes away. You got to get creative and figure something out. You guys come up with 13 days of Phish. It's amazing.
Well, it's funny. I was sitting with Richard Glasgow at the point when we did the New Year's run last year, and we were talking about it as a possibility. And Richard also was talking about the fact that they were hoping that they would get 13 nights without repeating a song, which just was stunning to me. And Richard said that the whole key to the whole thing was for Trey and the band to feel like they had it paced right, and they had it kind of the flow of the show was good. And it was just amazing that they were able to pull it off. It was truly a feat of great musicianship and creativity and imagination. So it was really quite a thrill. I've been doing this a long time, and it was really, really exciting to witness and to be a part of, no question about it.
And finally, we want to take a moment to shine a spotlight on ICM Partners Andrea Johnson. She's our Promoter 101 Badass of the Week. She has an amazing talent roster from two cellos to Wilson Phillips, and of course, Straight No Chaser, and always handles the world with amazing charm and a smile. This week's Promoter 101 Badass of the Week, Andrea Johnson. Congratulations, AJ.
Hi, this is Jason Kupperman from Paradigm, and you're listening to Promoter 101.
When you talk about some of the iconic talent agents in the music business, I think Marsha Vlasic has to be near the top of many, many lists. We are thrilled to have her on Promoter 101.
We think of some of the biggest names in music, from Neil Young to Elvis Costello and Regina Spektor and Moby and Band of Horses. There is an incredible agent behind it. We're lucky to have her joining us today on Promoter 101. We want to welcome Marsha Vlasic from AGI to Promoter 101.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
It's a beautiful day in New York. Where are you coming from today?
Battery Park, the other, all the way downtown, and it's taken me forever to get here.
Well, we appreciate you making the journey for sure. There's probably not an industry list that you're not in the top 10 of as far as most influential players. When they talk about people that have ears in the business and can identify acts, you have broken more talent than just about anybody.
Sounds good.
Is there a trick to your process? Is there something that you look for? I mean, because between Neil Young to Moby, there is just a range of different players that you've seen early, and you've gotten onto some very early careers.
You know what? I think it's instinct. I think it's passion. I think it's motivation. There isn't a black and white list of this is what you do to break an act. Every act, as you could see, is musically different. That is not by intention. I've always been fortunate to have the most eclectic roster, and I adore every one of them. And it's just, each act deserves an individual career path.
Now, you've gotten to work at a number of different agencies over the years, and your acts follow you wherever you go. Does it matter if you're at a big agency or an independent agency, or now you're at a very big indie? Does that change how the game works?
No, because in the earlier days when I was at the big full-service agency, none of my clients were interested in the other services that were available. And going from ICM to William Morris and then my own company for like 13, 14 years, I have personal relationships with all my artists, and I think they feel that they were always with me, and hopefully some have stayed, some have gone.
Can we talk about that for a second? Because you say personal relationships, and I think a lot of people say that, but there was a poll star where you had blue hair because you have a personal relationship with an act, and you made a bet, right?
No. I did blue hair because there was a woman on Park Avenue that I adored. I stalked her. I thought she was the most magnificent woman. She wore black, and she had this gorgeous royal blue hair. And when I'd see her on the street, I would physically just, my jaw would drop. And I wanted to look like her. And that's when I did it. And the craziest thing is I never had the nerve to talk to her. Think of that, me not have the nerve to talk to someone. And I'd see her in Bergdorf's or Barney's. And then one time I was in Venice, Italy, and I was on the boat going to Cipriani Hotel, and she and her husband were on the boat. And I oh my God, my idol. And I had to talk to her. So no, it had nothing to do with a bet with an artist.
Oh, that's awesome. I had heard folklore for years that it was like a bet with Ben Folds or something.
No. It was this magnificent woman. And she was an artist. She actually was a painter who lived on Park Avenue.
Did you know who she was or what she did before you met her? Or was it just her look was ecstatic?
Her look just made me stop wherever I was. Whenever I'd see her, the fact that she had the guts to have this gorgeous royal blue hair, and she carried it with such dignity, And I loved it. And then I did it, and my husband went crazy, but I never consulted him on my hair. And then my youngest son was in trouble in school, and we had to go see the headmaster. And he said to me, "What are you going to do? You're going to go like that?" And I'm like, "What am I going to do? Leave my head home? What am I going to do?" So all the way there, I'm thinking, well, what do I say to this headmaster when I get there? So I walked in, and they said, "Okay, so you see the hair. I did it so Franco wouldn't do it."
Jump right at it.
There's a 30-year history and a multitude of stories I'm sure you could tell about this. I think it'd be great for everybody to kind of take a little, 50-cent tour through Marsha Vlasic's history in the music business, how you got your start, and what the last 30 years have taken you, where it's taken you from, and what you're doing to this day.
Well, I started as an assistant to 3 agents in a small independent agency at the time called ATI, American Talent International. And at that time, there were just the 2 cool agencies being Premier Talent, which was run by Frank Barcelona, as we all know, and ATI, who was run by 3 guys, Jeff Franklin, Ira Blacker, and Wally Meyerowitz. And at the time, we represented Rod Stewart and Small Faces and Deep Purple and Uriah Heep and Rare Earth and Earth, Wind and Fire and on and on. And Premier represented Led Zeppelin and The Who. And, we were neck and neck with them. And I got my chance to become an agent there because one of the agents I worked for, Bruce Payne, was leaving to manage Deep Purple, and he thought I was going with him as his assistant. And Ira Blacker and Jeff Franklin said to me, "You don't need to leave, you can become an agent." So it was simple as all that, not really simple, but I had worked really hard to prove myself. And in the 70s, being a female in the business, especially with British men, wasn't the easiest thing to kind of convince people you really could give them the itinerary and you really knew where the artist was. And
I mean, there are a handful of successful women in the industry, but back then there weren't so many, so that really was breaking through.
There were 3 of us at the time. There were 2 at Premier Talent.
Barbara
Skydell and Jane Garrity, of which both of them, unfortunately, are not with us. So, it wasn't something that was common, and it wasn't something that was encouraged. From there, Tom Ross hired me at ICM, despite some of his coworkers not wanting to have a female agent, and it was Tom who did bring me over there. And I went there because the head of the New York office was not a big fan, and I was incredibly successful at the time. I had the entire British invasion. I had Styx and Rush. My roster was truly unbelievable at the time. And this who ran the department was horrible to me. And I was having my first child and having enough stress, having a child, being pregnant, and doing this job. And
that must have been really intensive because you travel to the hometown shows and what have you. So you're talking Styx is in Chicago, Rush is in Canada, the British bands that's crossing the pond constantly, being pregnant and starting a new gig. That had to be insane.
I'm known to do things like that. Anyway, at that point, ATI came back after me saying that they wanted me to come back to ATI because at that time Bill Elson was president and they wanted to make me vice president. So at the end of my maternity leave, I went back to ATI. And I was vice president there for about 12 years, I think. And, I don't know how much any of you youngins know about Bill Elson, but you could do your own Googling or speak to other mature people.
I remember meeting Bill Elson for the first time at the very first Polestar, and he was running ICM at the time. But yeah, his career and my career only overlapped by 30 seconds, but I can say I met the man.
Okay, so then we were bought by ICM.
So you just left and now you're going right back.
Right, but a whole new
decade,
world.
Yeah.
A whole new world because the person who I
that
left.
That buyout, Jeff Franklin got brought into ICM.
Right, but Jeff was no longer involved. So it was Bill Elson was running the show.
That's a powerhouse team because Tom Ross is there and 2 massive agencies becoming one.
You know what? I think Tom Ross was leaving then to start CAA.
Okay, so kind of got the timeline then.
Right. So we went back to ICM. And I stayed there a long time. And then Peter Grosslight, let him rest in peace, constantly pursued me. And I thought, why not take a shot at William Morris? And I went there. I just lived out one contract there. At the time, I didn't realize I was the satellite office being in New York, and everything was happening in LA, and it was very dysfunctional at the time, and it just was really difficult to keep up. And every 2 seconds, Peter was on the phone. Got to come out here. I was like bouncing back and forth like crazy. Figured, you know what? Maybe it's just the Gold Mountain guys were very encouraging of, why don't you just do your own thing?
It was like when John Silva was still there, I think.
Yeah. And so I moved into their offices on 44th Street, and I set up shop. And I needed that little stepping stone to I wasn't ready to go sign a lease and get technology. I just needed to just move, and have it there for me.
Sure.
So I split the toilet paper with them and the paper, and I just occupied space in their office until I was ready to go do my own thing. And then I set up my own company, and I was there doing that for quite some time as well. And
that was MVO?
Yeah. MVO stood for my very own, or Marsha Vlasic organization. But it got lonely, got really lonely. I didn't know how to bring in other people. And then at the end of that year, but I never remember years, I remember months, I was going to partner up with 2 people in our industry, and we got very far down the line to the point where I thought we were moving in together come January, and then over the Christmas break, they kind of went MIA on me. And it was kind of very disappointing. And at that point, ICM, Steve Levine was constant. And, it's all different now, it's all different. We want you back, you back, we could grow, we could do this, we could do that. So I thought, you know what, maybe it's time. And so I went and did that for 5 years.
You made them relevant again, because as an adult contemporary department, they had
Nothing.
they had a lot of the comic headliners and a lot
that
of the
was Steve
heritage
Levine's
acts,
part, right.
but they were missing, the Beach Boys kind of thing was big there, but they didn't have the cool.
They had no contemporary music.
And you brought back the cool, and you brought some of the younger cool agents over too. You helped bring over Nick and Robin.
I brought in Robin Taylor, and I inherited Craig Bruck, who wound up being a wonderful relationship. Robin Taylor, I would have met her and been there, but, I don't think she ever felt comfortable at the company. And as much as we were really on our own, I think she needed to go back out on her own. So that was a
Nick
disappointment.
stuck with you for a long time and then switched agencies at pretty much at the same time you did too.
Right.
I assume that had something to do with you.
Yeah, I brought him with me. And I would have brought Craig too. If you're listening out there, Craig. It just didn't work out.
It's very cool. Now, that spotting talent, that's just something that you've been able to do. And obviously Nick and Robin and Craig are part of that too, even though they're not acts. Talent is talent.
Mm-hmm.
That's something you've been very good at.
Thank you.
I was really surprised when you signed the Bronx, and I remember having a conversation at one of the conferences in the bar about it. They're so raw and hip and amazing, and
I think
so cool.
Matt, Matt makes me smile when I watch him sing, and the musicians and Joby. There's something about them. There's something. I was always into metal. I mean, my early days, I represented Biohazard and Anthrax and Metallica. So metal was always my kind of.
Yeah, it was just amazing. It was one of those things. It's they're so.
I
cool
still represent
and young and raw.
I still represent the Bronx.
And still one of the best live bands in the world.
I know. They need a break.
They should be a much bigger band. It's clearly radio doesn't have an avenue for that, but at some point they'll find a way to break through because they become this cult thing, which is just amazing.
I hope so. They've changed management now, and sometimes new blood does new things. And
okay, now let's talk. You went from ICM, and then you went over now where you're at currently at AGI.
Right. Well, my ICM situation was disappointing because it wasn't the growth availability that I had hoped it to be, and we decided to, like a divorce, separate. And I had opportunities to go to bigger agencies, and I just felt that I do best. I love my clients. I love working with my managers. Maybe I'm just not made for that big agency thing. I mean, being at AGI is like being at a big major, but yet you have you really operate like an independent, and Dennis does his thing and I do my thing, and we hang out together, and we actually put a package together that we have at Jones Beach tonight, and that's Cindy Lauper and Rod Stewart. So they're touring together this summer, which is a fun show. And
that is a cool show. I could see anyone that would go to see one would be excited to see the other, even if they weren't planning on paying to see both. They're definitely going to be into it.
Well, you just see people having fun and singing along, and Cindy does all her hits, and she's a great, great performer. And then out comes Rod and just kills it. It's really a fun show.
It's a good package. It seems like the industry is doing more of that as the shed business has become bigger, that we're seeing more of these cross packages where big acts are playing with other big acts, and it's not so much about support anymore on the bigger shows.
Well, it's nice to look at these ticket counts.
It certainly is.
It's nice.
So clearly that's working.
The Def Leppard package with Loverboy, I believe it's out now.
We talk about packaging here, and you were actually really on the forefront of a lot of the festival packaging, right? From Ozzy Fest to a number of other things. Horde, that's
Moby's Area Festival.
Yeah.
It's a hard thing to do, getting the acts. Now it's a different story because festivals have taken on a world of their own. But in the early days, it was like, other agents were very difficult because, they didn't want me poaching their acts or so. It was just a weird situation. But when it worked, it worked. And when it didn't, it went down big time.
When you're doing that, are guys like Neil Young making phone calls to other artists personally to help make that happen? Or is that a lot of calling through the agents and making that happen traditionally?
Yeah, there are a few people Neil would call. Very few. You count them on one hand.
So that put a lot of the onus on you.
Oh, it was me and Elliot Roberts. We did it for 30 years every day. We'd go, oh, I just got so-and-so. And he goes, oh, I just lost so. Oh, my God, what are we going to do? And every day, oh, my God, it's August. We have to go on sale. What are we going to do? We don't have this. We don't have... It was I miss it a bit. This is the first year we're not doing it.
Let's talk about booking Ozfest in stadiums everywhere when there weren't a ton of stadium shows. I mean, you guys were kind of building the festival business in stadiums that moved around. I mean, Horde did their thing, Warp does their thing, but they weren't doing stadiums in every market and building that many shows. The size, the ability, the flexibility that you guys had to have and create, you really invented the wheel on that.
Well, but at that time, the people that were doing it, who were responsible, everybody had their own responsibility. I mean, but Sharon hired the biggest and the best in production and stage managers and production managers. It was a huge machine.
I mean, you guys were doing multiple shows a week and you had full-day festivals. So unlike you two, who was doing a handful of shows, but they started traditionally at 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock and were running a 2 or 3 band show in the stadium and then moving the next town. You guys had to be set up to open gates.
We had 3 or 4 shows a week, but we would have stage.
You would jump stages?
Yeah, production A, production B, and send it on.
Right, because you guys had early show days. That started early.
Oh, doors were a lot of times at 12, 1 o'clock.
Made for very long days. So you guys are in building stages a couple days in advance, loading in that morning super early, getting doors open by 11 for noon and starting music immediately for multiple stage things. That production nightmare logistics, just insane. I imagine in the years that followed, that had to get easier and easier as you guys built the wheel and you guys just got better at it as time went on.
Well, I truthfully can't take any of the credit for the production or getting the show there. And for me, it was like getting the talent on the stage.
Which had to be a big deal within itself, because programming those shows, I mean, obviously a lot of the young bands want to be on Ozfest just because they get to play with Ozzy, but the headliners that you guys got to give up their own headline tours to come play on that was amazing. Is that a huge process in convincing a band like Rob Zombie not to do a headline tour and come play on a package?
Absolutely. Sharon played a big part in that. A very big part in it. We all did. It was a team effort.
Now, when Horde went out and Neil headlined, you wound up booking that tour, right?
That was the philosophy that Dave Fry had, that whoever the headliner was, that agent booked the tour.
Is that a weird thing to go from booking just a normal headline tour to suddenly have to book a festival that you're jumping into?
No, because I had already had the experience in booking the festival. Unfortunately, it wasn't that successful.
And where do you go with that when you build something with such a huge brand? Neil has always been a strong artist. And to have something like that where it's not necessarily amazing in this combination.
It wasn't a happy summer for me. I try not to reflect back on it. Let's put it that way.
Well, I mean, you're clearly known for your track record of success, but...
No, I've had some ups and downs.
Well, I don't think anybody can do the volume that you've done over the years without having some things that didn't work out. I mean, it's a industry of experimenting, and you just can't be afraid to take shots, because without R&D, there is no future.
Well, I think it's an industry you're dealing with human beings. You're dealing with people. Anything can happen, you know.
What are you excited about in music? What are the acts that you're like fired up about right now?
Cage the Elephant. I mean, that's like the big thrill at the moment. I mean, just watching them on stage and watching this band wants it more than I've ever seen a band want it. You know, they're going to get there. They're definitely going to get there.
They delivered an incredible performance on Letterman a couple of years ago that I think had David Letterman speechless when he was running the Tonight Show.
They just blow everybody away.
Yeah.
And they're the easiest band in the world to work with.
Is it about the live show for you? Is that how you decide if you're going to sign it?
Yes. I used to fight with other agents that wanted to take on acts without seeing them live, you know, and I'd say, well, wait a minute. You're not an A&R person that's just listening to the music. I said, well, you have to be in a room. And you can watch it on a video. I don't care. You don't get the vibe. You know, you got to be in a club and feel, whether it's four. When I went to see the Strokes for the first time, there were 4 people there that night. You know, it was like a private thing for us. But you have to feel the live performance if you're in the live business. And I used to fight all the time with some young agents.
There's a show, I was doing a Bronx Date, and you had called me about Tegan and Sarah. You said, I'm selling you this, trust me, but go see it. And I'm not going to sell it to you unless you promise you'll go see it. And it's like, okay, I'll do the show. And you're like, no. More importantly than you doing the show, because anyone else in the market will do the show if I ask them to. I want you to go see what I see.
You know, that's how I feel. I mean, for me to walk into a room, you know, somebody would say to me, you got to go see this band tonight. They're a cross between Iggy Pop and The Clash. Sounds right up my alley. And I go into the room and I watch this band go on stage, and I think, I check my phone and see, am I in the right place? Because they don't seem to me to be, you know, like the cross between Iggy Pop and The Clash, you know, and like be just so disappointed, you know, because for me, it is the live thing. And if you're a shoegazer band, then you got to shoegaze right. You know, or it all depends on what you really are. And I think if you look at my roster over the years and currently, everybody is a live career performer. And I didn't intentionally not get in the pop world or the single world. Believe me, I take a pop artist in a second, but it turns out that, you know, the thrill of putting a Regina Spektor tour on sale last fall after she had been on, you know, a 3 or 4 year hiatus, and having to choose the right venues and make sure I wasn't overreaching or underreaching, and having a tour go on sale that sells out is a thrill to me. And the similar thing happened with PJ Harvey, who I just recently in the past 2 years started representing. And when she came to me, we sat down and she told me everything she didn't want to do and everything she did want to do. And I said to her, you know, I will try to deliver what makes you happy. It's easier for me to make you happy than unhappy. And there were certain provisions that I couldn't deliver for her. And I had to sit down with her and tell her, it doesn't exist what you need. And because I was honest with her, it turned out to be a sold-out tour. And she's tomorrow night at Central Park. And here's an artist that hadn't toured in years. So those are the things that excite me.
Did you know when you had the meeting with her that this was going to be a big tour after that long hiatus? That seems like it could have gone either way.
I didn't know. I decided to book a conservative but cool tour. And I tried different kind of venues, and it all worked, you know. So whether, you know, she's happy. She's very happy. So
seems like it's one of the cooler buzz tours of the summer. People are definitely talking about how cool it was. Jim Glancy was just talking about how 25 kids from the Bowery office went to that show, not because they had to, but because they were fighting to.
The show is extraordinary. She just played Pitchfork. I was there on Saturday, and that was unbelievable. And she also went and played Forecastle, and I'm hoping she continues to play more festivals next year.
Now, how much of that is a part of the booking cycle now of figuring out what festivals you're going to book and working the tours around that?
I love festivals. I think it's a great opportunity for artists to grow and play to other than their audiences. If it's the right festival for them, I think you can work around the exclusivities, and it's like Chinese checkers, but that's what we do. And I think artists have more to gain than lose. I think it's helped Cage the Elephant's career immensely. I think they have killed on every festival that they have played, and people have walked away with their jaws dropped. So I think they've been established as one of the better, I'd say, if not the best, live new act that's out there. So I think it's all good. I think festivals are great to have. I think they give an act an extra bump that if you're not all over the radio, you certainly have an opportunity for people to see you that wouldn't see you.
I'd be remiss if we didn't take a moment to talk about the accomplishments you've made as a woman in the music business. You've been constantly honored as one of the top women in music by Billboard. The accolades move on, and for a business that is remarkably tough for women, do you have any advice to the women listening to our podcast about succeeding in the music business?
Well, this is 21st century, or almost 22nd century.
Yeah.
I kind of get angry. Recently, I was at one of the conventions, and a girl came up to me and she said, "So we really have a lot of, fighting to do as women." And I'm like, what are you talking about, girl? I mean, you have fights? You have a problem? There are more women in our industry right now than ever. I mean, what's your problem? If you're just using that as an excuse. I never used my sex as an excuse. I really did not. I never walked into the office and said, it was a bad time in the month for me. I'm cranky. Or I had a fight with my husband. Or I never shared any of that. For me, it was, I went in and I did what I wanted to do, and that was represent artists and do my job. And it didn't matter whether I was a woman or a man. I remember I was given the West Coast territory, because in those days, and some agencies are still territorial, I was given the West Coast territory. And I had Bill Brown as one of my first promoters to deal with. And I was so petrified to make that phone call on a daily basis that I would wait till the end of the day. I didn't know how to get on the phone with him and talk as quick as I possibly could, tell him what I wanted to sell him and how much it was, and then put the phone down, listen to him scream like crazy, but I did it. I didn't let him stop me. I didn't, I was so paranoid to call him, but yet I did, and I think it's an individual thing. You want to say that because you're a woman, you can't get somewhere in life, then that's your problem, honey, not mine.
Well, certainly there's way more successful women in the business in this day and age than there ever has been before.
And the opportunities are there if you want them. There are some great people in our business, great agents. Yeah. Marcy Allen is one of the best workers that you could ever come across, She plowed out of Nashville and taken the world by storm. You can't use your sex as that being a problem.
You're going to have to use a different excuse now, Luke.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for anybody coming up in the business on what are the musts that they need to do to succeed in your book?
I think I would like to say that you must have common sense and street smart to work in this business, and there are so many people that don't. And you could kind of tell the people that can't get their hands dirty. You got to be strong enough to go there, take the beatings when you take the beatings, take the praise when you get the praise. Every day's a new day, and, somebody appreciates you and somebody doesn't appreciate you. Somebody thinks that, you booked the whole wrong tour because you didn't sell tickets. Then, artists really don't take full responsibility. So
I've never noticed that before.
I think an agent is pretty much a thankless job in a way, but depending on your artists. If you book the tour and they do the business, it's because they sold the tickets. And if you book the tour and they didn't do the business, it's because you booked the wrong tour. So
I always thought it was our fault. Wow, that's good to know it's yours.
Yeah, no, it's all ours. It's all ours. And recently, though, an artist really thanked me. I think they appreciate me, and I definitely appreciate them.
It's obviously clear with the number of artists that you've carried for so long. Some of those artists have been with you a very long time and been very loyal, and this is not a business where people are very loyal. So that's obviously great praise.
Well, it feels like an accomplishment.
I want to thank you so much for taking the time and talk to us.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Damn, she is so cool. So stoked to get a chance to sit down with her. Always impressed on how well she carries herself and handles her business. Marsha Vlasic, a legend.
Trevor Solomon, Crashline Productions. I'm on Promoter 101.
As it's the name of the show, maybe we should just go ahead and address some of the Promoter 101 tweets of the week. Dan, let's get to it. Where an agent calls to pitch an artist that has switched agencies and then skip the step of telling their original agent.
Everyone can stop calling. The agent in question has been told, so you can stop worrying. It probably wasn't you. But this is just disrespectful by the artist.
We all want to maximize every opportunity. However, sometimes it's just more cost-effective to pay the freight.
An example of this is doing everything yourself to save the outsourcing costs. However, just getting it done quickly and right and getting back up and running is usually the most ideal idea.
When a competitor pitches me to swing my support to them over my own company.
Man, that's a tall order, but you got to respect the balls it takes. This one was impressive.
When you see David egging on Goliath, how badly can you feel for David when he gets knocked out by Goliath?
Yeah, you really have to be aware of the bear that you're poking. You may just bite off more than you bargained for.
When an agency lists Sponge on their quote-unquote classic rock roster, it's kind of unlike you to call it a band, Steiny.
If an agent's going to spam the entire Polestar directory with it, why hide it?
When you keep people looped in on email chains for no real reason.
I think we can all agree this is just annoying.
That does it for Promoter 101 Tweets of the Week. Please follow Dan on Twitter. He's at The Jew.
Hi, this is Bruce Solar from APA. I'm about to tell you some very, very secret stuff on Promoter 101.
From time to time, we like to give back, and after grilling a guest for an hour or so, we want to give them a chance to ask what's on their mind, a.k.a. turning the tables.
This week, we're joined by ICM Partners, Rick Farrell.
Las Vegas, Nevada, hanging out with Rick Farrell of ICM Partners, giving you a chance to turn the tables. Ricky, what do you got?
All right. Well, I'm wondering, why is it that the VIP deals, the artist VIP deals, are such a hassle? I know they want to keep 100% of the upside, but they'll often provide all their own staffing, and I always end up spending a lot of time negotiating this and putting this into place. What's your take on it?
Well, here's the thing. You're taking money from the gross that could only be there because of the show. It takes away from what a better seat could have been. It takes away from the money they could have spent on other places. On top of that, we have to, no matter how little or much we want to, have to be involved. We have to deal with coding it in with the ticketing system. We have to deal with setting the venue up. Our staff has to be involved no matter what because it has to run through us. So there's processing and administration that has to be involved. Also, we're the one taking financial risk on the show happening. So if there's revenue coming in, we want some small taste to that. A, to cover our overhead, but B, we're all realizing expenses here. It should all go into the pot, and the act's getting 85, 90% anyway after the costs are met and beat. So why shouldn't it all go in to protect our downside, and then you're going to get it all back anyway if the show sells anyway? It just seems like only fair to protect the promoter and let us join in any risk and reward that's involved in that particular date.
Well, that's a definite argument. I think that some of the artists feel like, you know, this is the thing that they are part of, they staff, they are going above and beyond and doing this, and they want to retain as much of the upside as possible. And I'm starting to see a standard where people are asking for a certain percentage of the upside. How do you proceed with that?
Well, I think it's a case-by-case scenario. Certainly it's a relationship business where you have the discussions of this is what we expect, and then you negotiate from there. Because there is no hard, fast rule. You don't make the same thing on every act in every market every night. It's always a different thing. It's always a different scenario. But the conversation needs to happen now, just like a merch deal, just like an artist guarantee, just like adding another support act that isn't already part of a tour. These are live, living conversations that we all need to have together, and it's our job to negotiate these things, just like if we have to worry about budgeting for backline. You know, it's got to be done before the deal happens. No surprises. And that way, night of show, everything plays out the way everybody should. But if it's presented correctly and done in the negotiation process, everything's negotiable.
Agreed.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank you.
Love Rick Farrell. Or as he's known around the biz, Ricky for real.
Hi, this is Heath Miller.
Becca Leifer.
Ed Mike Cohn.
Derek Dimmenstein. Jason Kupperman.
Jason Miller. John Scher.
Marsha Vlasic.
Mike Fruitman.
Ricardo Bacco.
Peter Schwartz.
Nick Storch.
I'm on Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
I'm on Promoter 101.
Got some birthdays to celebrate this week. It's August 14th to August 20th, 2017.
Monday, 8/14, Stuart Goldberg. Mills Entertainment's John Tembler, Tyler Fay, Brett Baer, John Boyle, and Peter Jest.
On Tuesday, Security Mastermind Michael Fruitman, APA's Cass Scripps, Rob Buswell, and APA's Susie Gange, and Steve Isaac.
Wednesday, my much better half, Elodie Steinberg. Happy birthday, wifey.
On Thursday, wishing a happy birthday to ICM partners China Chuan, Access Pass and Designs Alma Sheck, and Canadian Music Week Neil Dixon. That's 3 great birthdays right there.
On Friday, Canadian's own Dave Fortune.
On Saturday, we're wishing a happy birthday to WME's CJ Strock, Polestar's Brad Rogers, CA's Kyle Walensky, Brad Henderson, Bo Basic, and Greg Green.
Sunday, Kara Finkenberg.
Happy birthday to everyone, to all of you, from the gang of Promoter 101.
This is Sean Striegel, Senior Vice President of Live Nation New York, and you're listening to Promoter 101.
Our next guest is best known for his work in the record business, but he has taken his years of experience and put them to paper, publishing his first book, The Singer-Songwriter Bootcamp Rulebook, 101 Ways to Improve Your Chances of Success. We're pleased to welcome Mr. Larry Butler.
Promoter 101 at the beautiful Sunset Marquee, hanging out with the infamous Larry Butler.
Actually, it's the Marquis de Sade in the heyday, and that's how I remember it. Thanks, Dan. Good to be here.
So you got quite the epic industry career. You've got the label background, you've done some management side, and now you've tried your hand at writing.
Yeah, not so much try by hand. I've always written something. In fact, I've always been known for a great email memo writer when I was at Warner's. But this is like a culmination of everything I've learned over 40 years, because in addition to what you just mentioned, I actually started out playing in bands. I played in bar bands for 10 years, keyboards and guitar, booking and tour managing and roadie stuff, and ran a nightclub for a couple of years and booked concerts into Cincinnati and booking agent, and pretty much dabbled in everything one can do in the live entertainment field in Ohio before I headed to California.
Do you ever have a chance to be a groupie?
No.
So there's always room for improvement.
I had the chance, like the time that my band opened for the Rolling Stones in Dayton. Quick story, and it's very industry. The musicians' union rule at the time, and maybe it still exists, is that if indeed you're a national or international touring act and you land in town and the promoter, you have a show, by musicians' union rules at the time, you had to hire a local act of at least that many performers. And so when the Rolling Stones came to Dayton and a bunch of other bands, and there were 5 people in the band, they had to hire a 5-piece local band, and we were a 5-piece local band. So we were the opening act for virtually everybody that came through Dayton, Ohio for a couple of years while I was in high school.
Are you fucking kidding me?
It was great. We opened for the Beach Boys and Jan and Dean and the Byrds and people like that.
Because you were a 5-piece band that could play.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you were in the union, so you had to be able to play.
We were in the union. See, not the rest of the bands in town weren't in the union. We were in the union.
And to be in the union, you have to have a standard of quality. Not just any. You had to be able to read music. You had to be able to play.
No, you just had. We were the rock and roll band, so it didn't matter what we did as long as they hired us.
So if somebody's looking for a band that they could play a wedding or something, they call the union. You guys would get the call.
We got that gig too.
So you guys were like the local Gin Blossoms.
We had a van, we had gear, we had matching outfits, we showed up on time, we weren't any trouble.
What was the name of your band?
Ivan and the Sabres. Ivan was the lead guitar player, he was the lead singer, he wrote all the songs or whatever. I was like the second guy, I was the second banana. I was the keyboard player and backup vocalist, but I did all the arrangements.
You were the Robbie Krieger, huh?
Oh, exactly.
So, did you guys have an album?
No, we made some singles. We got airplay locally in Ohio, in Dayton, and Cincinnati.
I have this vision of Larry Butler in The Wonders.
There's photos that look like that.
You guys look great in the gray. Have I told you that?
Oh, no, it's all fine. The other highlight of my performing career was later when I was in college. I was in Cincinnati, and the band I was working with, we co-opted and ran a nightclub. We were the house band in this club. It was the summer of '67, the summer of love. And we played every night, and we also booked bands into this place. We booked Procol Harum and Taj Mahal and Alice Cooper and stuff like that. And in the summer of '67, I got a call from the ATI agency, Jeff Franklin, who used to book bands in Columbus and Dayton. I'd known Jeff for years. And he had a brand new act, Jimi Hendrix. And were we interested in him in our 500-seater for the next spring, for the spring of 68? This was the summer of 67. He had just done Monterey. Are You Experience was just being released in the States. And we said, sure, $2,500, we'll take it, Jimi Hendrix. And we figured by the time next spring rolls around, he's going to be huge. Well, that was the trouble. By the time next spring rolled around, he was huge. We got a call in January from Betty Sperber, who was Jeff Franklin's boss at ATI, saying, well, we're up in the price from $2,500 to $12,500, which we couldn't afford, and we're selling it to Xavier University. However, here's the consolation prize. You guys get to come to the show, come backstage, meet Jimmy. He knows that you were the first ones in the door, and he wants to thank you for being an early believer. Okay. So the night comes. It's like next March. We go to the show. We go backstage. It's after midnight before Jimmy finally comes out of his whatever he does. And we talk for a while. Then he says, you're in Cincinnati, Ohio, and it's a Wednesday night, and he doesn't have to go. He's got to go back to the Holiday Inn. So he says, what do you guys do? Where do you go at this hour? And I said, well, it's moving in on 2 o'clock. There's nothing in Ohio. We got to go across the river to Kentucky. They're open till 4. He said, let's go. So Jimmy and my band, we all get in our van, and the tour manager says, I want him back by 4 a.m., Okay, no problem. We go across the river. We go to this club that my lead guitar player knows with this band. We have some drinks and whatever. And the band finishes their set. And Jimmy turns to us and says, you want to jam? And we say, sure. So we get the permission of the band. We use their instruments. We get on stage. He borrows a guitar. And we try to follow him. We just says, we're going to do a blues, shuffle blues in A. Bum, 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 that kind of thing. So we started out, and then he goes off playing for 10 minutes in a world and a universe and a song that is not recognizable, but we just keep bum, 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 but for 10 minutes, and finally, and he has a wonderful time because everybody else, I guess, tries to follow him, and we're not trying to follow him. He just loves having this steady beat behind him, and at the end of, 10 minutes, he just makes a signal like the song's over, and that was the end of the song. We finish our drinks, we get in the van, we go back to the Holiday Inn before 4 a.m. and dump him off and never saw him again.
All I heard was you got to jam with Jimi Hendrix,
That's exactly
man.
Right, man. But that's the story. And it had to do with Betty Sperber stiffing us for the show.
Now, did he deliver on that story that he knew you guys were the guys and really did want to thank you for?
Yeah.
Was that all true, or was that agent feedback?
It was agent feedback, and when we first broached the subject, he seemed confused. But then when he heard the story, he went, "Oh yeah."
Okay, so he was aware.
He was aware.
He had no interest in kissing your ass.
No, God no.
But
no.
He was down to hang with you.
Oh,
you guys are musicians.
Totally.
He's musicians.
That was it.
We
were a local band. We had contracted to hire him. We knew who he was. We were cool too. It wasn't like you said, "Were you a groupie?" No, I don't have a photo. I don't have an autograph. I got nothing. We were being cool.
You acted as if you belonged there.
Bingo.
But you knew you were in the presence of greatness already.
Oh, Jesus, yes. Everyone did. I mean, McCartney got him the gig at Monterey Pop. McCartney went to Monterey Pop, said, I will join your booking group of people and entice people to come to Monterey Pop as long as you book Jimi Hendrix in. That's what he told Lou Adler. I mean, that's the kind of person that just knew what Hendrix was about. Sweet guy from Seattle.
The statue of him is just down the street from Dick's Hamburgers.
And there's nothing but photos of him as we walk through the Sunset Marquee. So I kept playing in bands, spent a summer in Saint-Tropez once playing at a nightclub, Bridget Bardot's nightclub. We got a gig through a friend. Spent a whole summer. That was good. No money in it, but it was a good time. Then early 70s, I went to see Yes and realized that I was never going to be as good as Rick Wakeman, and I was never going to be in a band as good as Yes, and I got to do something else.
Jesus, if everybody had made that decision, there'd be only one band.
Well, it was a revelation to me. It was the best thing I'd ever seen. Every other band I'd seen, yeah, they're good. Yeah, I could probably keep up with that, but Yes, it was no way. It was like, oh, shit, this is where music is going. I can't go there. I'm not that good. I never wanted to be that good. I was never...
Yeah, if we all had to keep up with the prog rock players, none of us would ever play again. It would be King Crimson, Porcupine Tree, Yes, Dream Theater, maybe Kansas.
Maybe. I never saw Kansas.
And Alan Parsons. That would be the whole list of who got to tour.
So I quit the band, sold my gear, and moved to California. Moved to L.A. My brother was here. and started hanging around with my friends in Pure Prairie League. They're from Cincinnati. At the time, Amy became a big hit, and they were living high here in the hills. In fact, one of their guys quit, and I went out on tour with them as a backup guitar player and keyboard player because, again, a union rule, the contract read 5 guys. Where's your 5th guy? So I had to show up. So I don't even know if I was even plugged in. And they introduced me to their manager who said, I've got to act on Warner Brothers that I've just signed, and they've got to go on tour, and they don't have a tour manager. Have you ever been a tour manager? He said to me. And I paused for the requisite 2 seconds, and I lied. I said, yes, I have.
I can do that.
So I got the gig. So I'm out on the road with this Warner act, being the tour manager, driving the van, staying in Holiday Inns, eating bad food, dealing with crooked promoters and drunken crews. And there'd be this Warner Brothers artist relations guy. And he would be flying between gigs. He was following us around, and he'd be taking programmers to dinner and buying drinks at the show, living the high life and having a good time. And I'm thinking, that's the job I want. So when we got back to, the tour was over back to Burbank, I met his boss and said, I can do this job. You need me for cred. I've been in a band. I've been a tour manager. I've been a promoter. This is tour artist relations. You go on tour. You need someone who's tour friendly. That's me. He said, stick around. So he gave me Randy Newman tour to tour manage, and then I did Ry Cooder. Then as a sidelight, not Warner, I was Isaac Hayes tour manager. We did a world tour. In fact, if you haven't been to South Africa with Memphis musicians, the Isaac Hayes band during the height of apartheid, you haven't lived. It was strange.
So how long were you on the road?
5 years.
Okay, so that's a lot of learning.
That's a lot of learning, knowing that tour manager isn't what I wanted to do. And that's when I saw this Warner gig, and I just hung around the Warner office. Anything, you want me to go pick up somebody at the airport? You want me to take photos of a promotional thing? I'll do that. I was there to do anything that needed to be done. I got paid a little money here and there, sleeping on my brother's couch in Westwood, waiting for something to happen, and somebody quit. The guy doing college artist relations decided he wanted to be a race car driver, and he quit. And I was in the office the day he quit. I got the gig.
So you basically created your own intern position.
Bingo. That's exactly right.
So you got the gig.
It was like I was listening to the podcast and you were talking about how do you get a job in this business? And you were telling what you did. That's what I did. Just kept plugging away and meeting people and doing favors for people.
Okay, so you learn what it's like to be on the road, which I think everyone that works at a label, in a marketing firm, in a promoter's firm, in an agency firm, in a management firm, all needs to, and a venue, by the way, all needs to know what it means to be on a bus or in a van and play a show, hang out with your fans, do the fun things that everybody thinks is going on, get in a van or a bus, drive to the next city, sleep in a moving vehicle with other people in a small defined space, and then get up and do media the next morning, a signing at a store, go schmooze whoever you can while you're in the market, do sound check, meet someone that you are told you need to meet by management or the label or the radio station, that this is the guy you have to give some FaceTime to, whether it's a local politician that you should care about, and you have to act like you do even though you have no idea who it is. Then you sit through the openers and you meet their girlfriends and somebody's mother, and you hear about hijinks of somebody you've never met before as if you're friends.
And you'll never meet again.
Right. And then you get to play your set, although everyone has gone over, so your set is cut off because there's a hard curfew. And then you got to go and get back on the bus and do it all again. Everyone should learn how that feels. Because till the time where you're headlining theaters and making real money, where you have the nicer buses where the stuff pops out and you're cruising a separate bus and everyone's not on top of each other.
You might even have a hotel room from time to time.
It is a little weird when you're waiting 4 days between showers because you're hoping the venue has something besides cold water or boiling hot water, or there is no soap, or there is no towels, or there is a towel, but you know that that's been used for something and it's not something you want on you when you get out of the shower.
Sounds like you've lived it, Danny.
I've done some miles.
In my book, I say that, and it's true, the whole basis of this is my experience this past couple of years trying to teach young kids like 16 to 21 who want to be singer-songwriters what it's about, what they need to do, what they don't need to do. And when I meet their funding, usually the parents, I'd say, I'm going to save you $100,000 today. Because when I'm working with your kid, or whoever it is you're funding, first of all, your kid wants to make an album. We're not doing that. He's not ready. Second of all, your kid wants to make a video. We're not doing that. He's not ready. Third of all, your kid wants to go on tour. We're not doing that. That was money down a rat hole. You've just saved $100,000. First, we're going to make your kid into a live act that's viable enough to make an album and make a video and go on tour. And that could take a while. Let's see if the talent's there. Let's see if the stick-to-itiveness is there. Let's see if the drive is there, because that's really what it's all about.
Okay, well, let's talk about, for a moment, the philosophy. A lot of musicians, like musicians, believe you shouldn't record an album until you've done real road work.
Bingo.
The hypothetical number goes up and down, but usually it's somewhere around 100 live shows. A band should not record until they've done a good 100 shows so they can work it out.
That's a great figure. I'll go with that.
I don't think in this day and age of digital music, it's realistic to expect that somebody's not going to have some kind of product on a website before that.
I agree. I don't agree with that, but I agree that's what they're going to do.
But maybe before they sink real money into putting out physical product.
Or going to a real studio, or making a $25,000 video, or going on a 3-month tour on a third act on a bill where they get no money. Yeah, those things. Why?
Let's talk about the book. So you did your time at Warner, and that developed into the job. You were in the door, and you were there for a long time.
22 years. The whole credo behind the artist relations, artist development department at Warner's, which was up and running when I got there, I didn't start it by any chance, was that touring sells records. If the band is only going to be in Denver once this year, let's make sure that they're doing a Studio B at KBCO, that in the Denver Post, they're doing a in-store at whatever's down at
Wax Trax,
13 Washington. And,
Twist and Shout, Elms on the Hill.
And more than the 500 people that have come to the show to see them, that all that media...
We left breadcrumbs all over the market.
Yeah. Not only pre, but post-show. So when you're in town, we want to, like you said, we want to go to the store. We want to visit with the press guy. We want to do a little TV at sound check. We want to go on the air at the radio station. We want to do all that. And somebody needed to pull that together. And that's what the Artist Relations Department nuts and bolts was about. There was a credo here that I had to kind of convince. The key to artist relations at the time was high-paid babysitting, and the point was to try to get these rock and roll musicians who actually were in a band because they didn't want a job, they didn't want to work, getting them to work and making it pleasant, or, I'll take you to lunch, or when we're in Dallas, we'll drive by the grassy knoll, get them out of the hotel room and take them places, but have some attraction about it. Wait till you meet this music director at the radio station. Wow! That kind of stuff.
So something of a spin doctor of what the field trip of work was going to be.
And that was the gig. But another facet of it, and one that I brought to the party, was the fact that having been in bands for 10 years and tour manager for 5, these young bands that Seymour would sign just by looking at them really didn't have their show together, didn't have the act together. I'd give them suggestions like, restructure that set. That song belongs first. Or you should be standing over there. The whole scene of your set is all to the left, and you should be centered, that kind of thing.
Teach them how to build a set.
Tips on how to visually. They had only made a record and played some bars in the UK.
So literally artist development.
Totally. Literally artist development as opposed to just record sales.
But helping them in all aspects so they'd have a career.
Not always successful.
So with that in mind, the book is called
The Singer-Songwriter Boot Camp Rule Book, 101 Ways to Improve Your Chances of Success.
Okay, and it's available online.
Amazon, in printed and digital form. The whole point of the book is working with the book. The whole point of the book is working with the book, and eventually, if you're in LA and talented enough and you like to work with me, I can give you one-on-one. That's part of my deal. It's what I do. That's how I make a living.
As a consultant?
Yeah. Not a manager, consultant. And I teach these kids. And the whole idea is the fact that I won't necessarily be able to make you a star. That's kind of happenstance. But if you follow what I tell you to do, I'm going to make you better. I can get you ready to be a star. I can make sure all the ducks are in a row, so when the record company, agent, manager, investor, publisher, music supervisor comes along, you've got all those slots filled. They can't say, well, you don't have much of a show, or, well, I don't like what you're wearing.
This
or,
is
well,
a great game. You can look at an act and you can pick 3 or 4 things that you would fix on almost any act.
I can tell you 5 things right now that every singer-songwriter is doing wrong. Let me think if I can remember. I know they're written down somewhere. My number one thing is eating the mic. Everybody does, well, I'm doing a visual now. I've got the SM58 here right up to my mouth where you can't see my mouth, and you have no idea. I could be speaking a foreign language and you wouldn't have any idea.
Yeah, but I'm recording you. So.
Yeah, of course. And I recommend a Telefunken MAE or M81 is a mic you can put down at a 45-degree angle beneath your chin and sing over so the audience can see your mouth. Your mouth, your hands, and your eyes. Take off the damn sunglasses.
So you're saying Bono's doing it wrong?
Yeah. Well, I saw the photo in the baby. He's not wearing sunglasses anymore. You can see through them. They're tinted, they're yellow, but you can see his eyes. The key is being able to see your eyes, see your hands, and see your mouth. You need those three visuals to communicate to an audience. If you hide any or all three of them, you've just lost a major communication signal back and forth with your audience.
So Jim Morrison turning his back to the audience while singing is a mistake.
Jim did things that would not work well for me in my book. It's true.
Does he get a bye because he's Jim Morrison?
Yeah. Everybody gets a bye for one reason or another. Success is success, no matter what.
He broke through the wall anyway.
And he took off his pants in Florida, so I wouldn't have recommended that either.
It's funny, there is an amazing number of rules in the industry.
Yes.
I love to tell people that I had a great teacher, and one of my mentors knew all the rules from early on.
Who's that?
Doug Kaufman. Doug knew all of the rules, but what I also loved was Doug would explain to me the exceptions to the rules as he broke them, because he did what the manager, the artist, or the agent wanted, because Doug knew what I didn't know yet. It's good to know the rules, but if you're going to lose the fucking act, break the rule, because you have to answer the manager or the agent or you're not getting the fucking show. And at the end of the day, your rule book is great, but you got to get it done. And if you don't have the act, all you've got is your playbook.
Yeah.
And I was always amazed because Doug would explain the rules to me, and I hung on to these things like they were the
In
Bible.
stone, yeah.
And Doug would do what he needed to do to get the shows. And I'm not saying that these were mistakes. Doug got the shows, and Doug's a good buyer. But it was the lesson. This is the written lesson, and this is the real world lesson. And I got both educations from him because he understood the industry on a much different level than I did when I was 19 years old and he was running the Ogden and trying to book 1 million shows. And I was trying to learn everything I possibly could. But at the same time, I was always... This is probably where I failed with Doug at the end of the day, was I would question him on his own rules. I would say, this is what you taught me. Why'd you do that for them? And he was like, because that's what they wanted, and we would have lost the act to Barry Fay. That's why. But it's not for you to question me. It's for you to learn. And it was an interesting thing because Doug allowed me to learn. And he answered my questions. He might have gotten annoyed from time to time. But I was an inquisitive young man, and I asked lots of questions. And at some point, I got to move on to bigger mentors that were further in the industry, and I would annoy people like Bill Silva with these questions. Yeah. And I saw Bill less, but I had access to him. And this is before email, so I probably wouldn't have a relationship with Bill the way I do now if I had access to Bill via email the way I do now, because I would have annoyed the shit with him with like 20 questions. But every once in a while I would call Bill and I would play Stump the Promoter, and I would call with things I couldn't figure out. And Bill is a true student of the industry, so if I could stump him, it was something that he'd think about and he'd get back to me, and it would be something that we'd have fun with. And 9 times out of 10 it would be something that he had seen before, and he'd say to me, no, you do this, and this is why. But it was always a thing. And Doug and Bill are definitely on 2 different levels of their understanding of the industry, whereas Bill has, in a fishbowl of Los Angeles, booking the highest end venue in the country, in the market where most of the agents are. He's under the microscope constantly. If you make a mistake in this market, the manager or the agent is here. One of them is going to see it. And if not, somebody's going to send them a picture, probably your competitor,
can't make any mistakes.
of what happened. Oh, yeah. Toulette's and Elliot Lefko and Silva and Eric, I've always felt, and Alex Hodges, like these guys have got to be amazingly good at what they do, because it doesn't matter who on your team screws up. You were the guy they sold the show to. If marketing put the wrong date on the ad, that's you.
It's you. It's on you.
So, same thing in New York. Jason Miller has to deal with the fact that it has to be perfect. Now, luckily, you can't afford to advertise shows in New York anyway, so
what does it
the only thing you can mess up is the email blast. You don't get to just book New York or LA. You rise to the level of getting to book New York or LA.
I had the pleasure and the wonderful experience of working with Bill Silva as his general manager for his management company during the high ride of Jason's I'm Yours record and touring. And I was in the office and Bill was on the road. And yet I learned so much in those 3 years from Bill Silva. Because being in the record company is one thing, but being on the manager side is a whole different ballgame. And there are things, so many things I thought I knew I did not know. And those 3 years with Bill were invaluable to me in putting together the full package of what I know about the touring industry. It's all about.
There's a little wisdom when he's talking to you. He drops it. You're like, why didn't that ever occur to me? He was managing Raul Madon for a little while.
Yeah.
And I remember him saying to me, ironically, we were in Seattle at the Triple Door where the GM of the venue didn't want to let him into a sold-out show. It was a great start of the night. Yeah, it was funny. He was a good sport about it. It was like, thank God for cell phones. Anyway, I remember going to get him and we were talking, and there was this moment where he was like, it's about when you get somebody on the phone, keeping them on the phone and getting as much business done as you possibly can. So if you've got an artist on one side, but you got to show you're confirming on the other, and you're doing all of these things. There's the synergy. It's like taking advantage of that synergy is just good business. And there are little things like, of course that makes sense.
Yep.
Did I think of it? No, but as soon as he said it, I was like, yes, of course that makes sense. And not having these interactions with people like yourself and Doug Kaufman and Bill Silva. And at the end of the day, it's just like, that's the knowledge of the industry, is learning from the guys that have been there before you that know. Developing your career, developing an act, it's all the same thing. It comes down to paying attention to the history that happened before you. Because what worked in the past not only will work in the future, but it'll prevent you from fucking up where your fucking mentors fucked up, and it'll save you a fortune.
I make that point to the parents and to the kids I work with. One is the fact that, I've been in this business 40 years, and that's what my experience is based on, and that's what I'm teaching you from. It's like, 40 years ago, man, everything has changed. No. Nothing has changed. The only thing that's changed is that people are not buying recorded music and it's being distributed in a wholly different manner. What hasn't changed is the live performance. People pay money to go be entertained and go see a band. They're using SM58s. They're playing Stratocasters through Twins, and they're singing variations of Beatles songs. It's still the same show, and people are still looking to be entertained at the end of the day. And that's what I'm teaching, is entertaining, not what happened 40 years ago.
No, and the business certainly is cyclical in that sense, that regardless of the genre, regardless of the players, the same themes keep reappearing.
Yeah.
Because the fans like to be entertained, and real entertainment will always sell if presented correctly.
Presented correctly. And that's my point.
At the end of the day, that's what the book is telling you.
And I say to them, and the parents say, look, everything I'm trying to teach you, you could learn on your own. You could be in bands and go on tour, and it'd take you, probably about 5 years, but you could pick all this stuff up. Along the way, you're going to pick up some bad habits as well, but you'll pick up everything pretty much because that's where I learned it. I can save you that 5 years and tell you all about it in about 6 months if you want to save yourself that trouble and that expense and that heartbreak. Because, by the way, making an album, that can be fun. Expensive, but fun. Making a video, expensive, but fun. Touring, boring as hell. And still very expensive. Like you just described earlier, all that 23 and a half hours of stuff for that half hour on stage. It's like, wow.
Yeah, you got to learn to appreciate the little things.
If you can.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing. But everyone, I think, should experience the road.
Totally. And that's the hook. I was mentioning the 5 things that everybody's doing wrong. One of them is too many mid-tempo songs. If you're a singer-songwriter and you're just starting out and you're in your bedroom or on your couch and you're strumming your guitar, your natural tendency is to write a mid-tempo song. Something, I'm sure, very heartfelt and heartbreaking and filled with pathos and hurt and emotion, but it's still boring as hell mid-tempo song. The audience is looking for up-tempo. You aren't selling your song, you're selling entertainment. You got to get them moving in their seat. You got to get an up-tempo song or slow ballads that just make people cry. Stay away from the mid-tempo stuff. It's boring, it's useless, it's a waste of time. Everybody's going to go to the bar or the bathroom. Stick with the up-tempos and the ballads. The only mid-tempo song you should be doing in your set is a cover song because they all know it and they'll stick around and sing along with it. But an unfamiliar mid-tempo song, as I mentioned before, the 3 things you want the audience to look at all times are your hands, your mouth, and your eyes. You do not want them to look at your boots or your flowered shirt or your white guitar or anything else that's distracting on stage. Get rid of all those distractions. Wear solid colors, dark solid colors. Make sure your guitar is at least colorfully muted. Block all your logos. Don't give them anything else to look at except this little golden circle right here, which is your hands, your eyes, and your mouth. And by the way, as part and parcel of that, your hair. You got to do something with your hair. It's got to be something. What I'm getting at is you need to be distinguishable. People need to be able to look at your photo, and the next time they see that photo, they'll go, "Oh, I know who that is. I remember that look." What look do you have? You got to have a look. And if you can't do anything with your hair, wear a hat. Do something in here. It's not about flashy boots or flashy guitars. It's something here. You want them to be able to, you want a headshot that says, "Here I am. And this is what I look like." Now, you don't want to start putting toy satellites in your hair. You don't want to go too far. You want to take whatever's acceptable now that the audience will buy into and take it one step further. Same thing with your music. Your music is going to be an amalgamation of everything, all your influences, and yet you need to copy those influences, and yet you need to combine them and take them one step away. Make the audience reach out and yet still give them something they can actually hold on to rather than, "What the hell are you doing? What are you doing out there? I don't understand that." You got to push the envelope, but not necessarily get out of the envelope and fly away. You got to it's just stuff. Danny, I can talk for hours.
I love it, though. I'm learning stuff. I think we should do a game where we have you come on after all of the award shows.
Sure.
And you can break down what the biggest acts in the world are doing wrong. They're
them.
always Sunday night. We always play the podcast comes out Monday morning. We just record it late night Sunday. We'll just drop it in. It'll be great.
Give me a call.
We should turn this into a new segment. What are the rock stars fucking up?
We can turn on like the Billboard
Professor
Awards
Larry.
and turn off the sound, and I can just, because where they're fucking up is mainly the visuals. They're not fucking up audioly. They've already recorded these tunes and they're reproducing them fine. The audio is great.
Right, and they've made it to the level where they're playing the Billboard Awards or the Grammys. So these people know how to play or write songs.
And they're only doing one song, which is great. When you're doing 6 songs, you want to move the microphone over here. You want to come out into the crowd. You want to do something a cappella. You want everybody to get around one mic. You want to,
Is there an example of someone that does it right?
Jason Mraz is fabulous. He's really good at it, particularly in a solo situation. When he's in a band, he's kind of tied to the fact that he's got a band and the band has to perform and he's center stage. But with Toka or with Mona, he's all over the place.
So Mr. A to Z is the guy to watch.
Totally.
Awesome. Larry, I want to thank you so much for taking time to talk to us.
So much my pleasure, Dan. Thanks for flying in to see me.
With the great professor of music, Larry Butler. This is a great read, and you can buy it now on Amazon. Just search for Larry Butler, and you'll find the Singer-Songwriter Bootcamp Rulebook 101 Ways to Improve Your Chance of Success.
This is Phil Rodriguez from Move Concerts, and you're listening to Promoter 101.
Something on your mind? Hit us up at steiny@promoter101.net. One of us will reply to every email, normally in minutes, because I'm OCD that way, but that's a whole nother story.
Coming up on our next episode, we will explore the history and revival of the Forest Hills Tennis Stadium in Queens with Madison House Presents Mike Luba, Jason Brandt, and Becca Leifer. We're also going to be joined by Artery Global's Trevor Swinson, who's going to give us a glimpse of his growing business. Plus, we've got Paradigm's Jason Kupperman sharing one of his favorite industry stories.
Until then, we wish you sold-out shows for the weeks to come. Cheers.
This is Peter Schwartz. I'm an agent at WMA in New York, and you're here on Promoter 101.
Ba-da-ba-ba.